everyone. So as Bev was just saying, yes, we've done this so many times now that we're all quite relaxed about it. I just put Charlie's dinner on and then hopped onto my computer. So because it's just so lovely to just come and have a chat with everyone as part of these ART360 talks and just find out a little bit more about people. I think the nice thing is yesterday, Bev and I were in London with a whole group of Pure members and we had some amazing chats, but of course, none of that's ever recorded. And so no one will ever know that that went on. And actually, interestingly, we went to see the Bloomsbury Group exhibition at Philip Mould. And that was all about a group of people who got together and had conversations and discussions. And the legacy is visual. There was a bit of film, wasn't there? There was a bit of film that we were watching, but that was not of them. The visual was of the daughter, Angelica. So this is really interesting because as part of ART360, we've got this amazing, we're gradually gathering this amazing archive of our time. And that's the thing that really motivates me to move away from the cooker every night at 7:30, leave Charlie to do his own dinner and come and chat to our amazing ART360 artists. So tonight is Bev Saunders from Edge Bespoke. God, what teeth have I put in today? They're not mine, someone else's teeth. Edge Bespoke Framers. And I'm just going to give you the screen, Bev, so that everyone can see you. They don't really want to see me. That's better.
Hello, everybody.
There you go. And we're just going to chat about your muse, your inspiration, which again is kind of what we were talking about yesterday. Where did it all begin? Who started you on the journey to where you are now?
An amazing picture framer in Bristol called Aza, who was my picture framer. She framed some pieces of work which I had created myself many moons ago. And I used to go to her quite regularly. And then one day I was collecting some work and I was a bit of a low ebb and needed another income source, basically. And I just said to her, I don't suppose you need any help, do you? And she said to me, oh my God, yes. Talk about being in the right place at the right time with the right question. Because Aza had just lost her business partner. Sarah had moved on to other things. So Aza was left running this business, which had been developed by two people. So she was beginning to struggle a little bit. And so I started working with her part-time. It was meant to be a stopgap for her. It was meant to be a stopgap for me. And to cut a long story short, I was with her for 7 years.
Wow. So just go back one step before that, because she was your inspiration to do framing, but you've just said you were taking your own artwork to her to be framed. So was this artwork that you were creating, your own artwork?
It was, but it wasn't for commercial. It wasn't for me to sell to a client. So I wasn't developing that kind of business. It was kind of a stopgap, and I was experimenting a little bit to see if anything came of it, really, to see if there was anything that I could do with it. And
so this was your graphics work?
Well, actually, I was trying out watercolor work. I was and basically property portraits, for want of a better word. And I was just sort of seeing if there was any mileage in it. And I did a few for a few people, mostly friends. And I even did a portrait of a rally car, can you believe? Because we were stage rallying at the time, and it was my driver's birthday. So I did a watercolor of his car, which was his absolute baby, and he still has it.
Oh, wow. So he has the car and the watercolor?
He has the watercolor, but not the car anymore.
Oh. So what took you to so back another step? So what took you into thinking, oh, this would be a good idea to do watercolors of houses? Why? What motivated you? What was the inspiration for that?
I was trying to maintain a creative career, basically. I qualified as a textile designer, and I was on a freelance basis for a short while. And cutting another very long story short, I ultimately ended up in Marks and Spencer's. Tried to get into the company as a trainee buyer, but it didn't work. And I was with Marks and Spencer's in a retail capacity on the sales floor, and wasn't really enjoying. I think I felt a bit snobbish about being a sales girl. Although I was on the first rung of management because I was training as a supervisor. But Julian's work moved us to Bristol, and I obviously had to leave Marks and Spencer's, and I was kind of in and out of temping work for a while, and I just felt as if I was drifting away from what I'd really wanted to do, which was to be creative. But there was no work for textile designers in Bristol, or anything that I could attach textile design to. So I just kind of it was an experiment. It was something that I thought I could do. I had obviously had interest in interiors and buildings and that kind of thing. So it was just, I don't know, I can't remember why it kind of popped into my head that I thought it was perhaps something that I could do. But yeah, it was the watercolor. It was the technique of watercolor that actually let me down, because it was then that I realized just how hard it is, and it's developed my admiration for anybody who does anything in watercolor.
It is so hard. I did a demonstration with Carol Mitchell in the last ART360, and I am someone who I like to try every type of art medium so that I can understand what the artists are going through. Oh, I found it so difficult. I did find it very difficult, and it's all this transparent layers and edging and using water, and oh my goodness, it was, yeah.
You have to think backwards to work in watercolor, and you have to work quick, and I don't work quick.
yeah, and also the different papers that you have to use and everything. It is complex. It's very complex. I can see though why that would appeal to you as a textile artist.
Yeah. Well, when I was working as a textile designer, it was all kind of pre-computer, so everything that we were doing and producing was by hand. So we were using gouache, which is a water-based paint, but it's different to watercolor. Watercolor has got transparency to it. Gouache lays completely flat. But I think I sort of, I don't know, I think it was sometime around then that I kind of felt that perhaps watercolor was something that I could play with. I suppose because water I thought would be easily manageable, because it's water-based rather than oils or anything like that, which was completely alien to me.
And that's hard, isn't it? Oil paint. That's another complex creature.
I don't know. I kind of didn't even move in that direction.
Stay well away from that.
Yeah.
So when you were doing textiles, who were you working for? A commercial company?
Yeah, I was working as a freelance for a company called Hayward Studios, who were based in Twickenham at the time. And they were a company which had a massive archive of soft furnishing designs. The archive went back into the 1800s. It was amazing. So a lot of the work that we were producing was large soft furnishings, curtaining and upholstery fabrics. And a lot of the work was actually for American production. And the Americans liked the English hand, the English style of working, and but they didn't like our colours. So we had a bit of as artists and designers, we had a bit of a battle over, beautiful colour combinations, as opposed to something which was obviously not on the English taste.
Yeah. And so you left, why did you leave that role to go to Marks and Spencer's? What was it, the attraction? What was the reason why you decided to move from the textiles?
It was a salary. It was being able to keep a roof over my head, because I was living in Croydon, which was where I studied. There's no point in me going back to Lincolnshire, which was where I was from, because there was no opportunity there for me. And I was actually living with a house full of girls at the time, professional girls, and one of whom was she was a she helped kids at school sort of work out their careers. She was a career advisor. And she came rushing home one night and said, Bev, Marks and Spencer's are advertising for supervisors. And I said, oh, great. And she said, no, Bev, it's Marks and Spencer's. They want supervisors. And I'm going, yeah, but I don't want to be a salesperson. And she said, no, but it's a foot through the door. Get a company and then work your way into, training to be a buyer. And I thought, the light bulb went on. And that's what I did. But unfortunately, I think I turned out to be better on the sales floor. And the boss, as we called him, was a little bit reluctant to let me go. So
it always happens. It's so annoying, isn't it?
Yeah.
That just because you're good at something doesn't mean you want to do it.
Sadly, no.
But obviously, in a commercial world, if someone sees you in an industry being good at something, that's pounds, shillings, and pence for them, isn't it? So they just want to keep you in that role. I've had the similar experience myself.
Yeah.
So you've had those two very distinctive experiences of working within the textiles and then working in retail. Then you find yourself happen upon this lady who teaches you how to do picture framing. How do the influences of the textiles and the retail, how does that inspire what you do in picture framing? Because we're all so complex. We all bring bits of all of this, don't we, to our today. How do you see that coming out?
Well, the retail bit, although it wasn't what I wanted to do, it did teach me an awful lot about presenting myself to people, how to help people, how to listen to people, how to talk to them to bring out the information that you need from them. So that was incredibly useful, actually. And I have to say, I do thank M&S for that, because their training is amazing. And sorry, what was the other part of the question?
So I was just really understanding how you brought, what skills and influences and inspirations you bring from textiles and retail into what you do today.
Yeah, the textiles, well, I've got to step back a little bit now, because having worked as a textile designer, and the textiles that we were producing was for interiors, it gave me a little bit of a background, so that when Julian's work moved us to Kent, I actually, and I was trying to get back into a creative career, I got myself a job working with a company of interior designers. So I was using my textile background and my eye for colour. I have a good eye for colour, and it kind of gave me, it showed that I had a background and that I had skills, and the fact that I could draw as well, because again, when I joined this company, nothing of it was done on computer. It was all produced by hand. So that kind of led me into specialist joinery work. So I was designing bars and back bars, and it took me into reflective ceiling plans. It took me into technical drawing. And these are all skills which I've kind of picked up along the way. But of course, it's all interiors based.
Yeah.
And sort of jumping forward a fair few years now, when I was really cheesed off working with the local authority, I suddenly thought, I kind of brought all of this together, and I thought, I've had some great experience with Asa as a picture framer, working with her, seeing how she runs her business, seeing how she deals with her clients, seeing how she puts things together, how she creates and presents work. She was an amazing person to watch. Picture framing, pictures, it's interiors based. Textiles and textile designing, it's interiors based. It wasn't fashion, thankfully. And then specialist joinery, I mean, that took me into designing fitted and freestanding furniture, and producing some detailed drawings for a number of joinery companies in the area. So it's all interiors based and practical. And that's the other thing about picture framing, is it's practical. And I am a practical person. I just love actually physically creating something.
Isn't that's such an interesting journey, because having had those experiences, you could literally turn your hand to anything.
Almost.
I mean, designing back bars.
I know.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. Of course, you know, sort of with the textile background, I could put together sort of mood boards and things like this, and bringing together textures and colours and different materials. And it was just, I loved it. Loved it.
So bringing that right up to date now. So you went back into framing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you bring all of those influences now into the framing that you're doing?
I suppose it's all a part of me. It's a difficult one to put into words, really. It's all experience and knowledge, and that, I mean, obviously I have an interest in interiors anyway, and it's, God, I'm not very good at explaining myself.
It's so fascinating to me, because you've gone on that journey, and as you say, you've got the aesthetic, you've got the practical, you've got the experience of the textiles design, you've got you're just explaining how, you know, you're actually so inventive is the word I would say, because you've like reinvented yourself quite a few times using that. And that's really inspiring to see someone, you know, continually reinventing themselves.
Yeah.
But using all of these skills in a completely different way, you know, the retail skill, the color and the aesthetic skill, the practical skills coming together. Yesterday, we were talking quite a lot about practical issues around framing, weren't we? And when you're talk us through a kind of if someone brought a piece of work to you, how do you approach it? Which bits of those skills are you using in each element of your job?
Well, I'm using all of it, really, because first of all, we sort of open up the work and we sort of have a look at it, and scale has a big impact. I start the conversation with my clients along the lines of, you know, have they had any thoughts? Because quite often they have, but more often than not, people haven't had any thoughts at all, and they kind of would like to leave it to me. So if that's the case, then I just ask them questions along the lines of, well, what is your taste? Do you like traditional things, or do you like contemporary things? How would you describe your interior? You know, the room where you want to display this piece of work. So that's really kind of how it kicks off. So that gives me a bit of a lead in. And then we start looking more closely at the work and looking at the character of the work, the medium of the work, the colours. And then when I'm actually looking at a piece of work, what I tend to do is look at the background colours, which are actually supporting the actual main story of the image. So there is always something in an image which is the main story. It's the standout image or item. So I tend to look at what's going on in the background, because that is supporting the main story. And it's from those colours in the background that I start pulling out mount ideas and framing ideas, the moulding ideas. And that's how I kind of start.
And you can see your textile background in that approach, can't you?
I think so. I think so, because everything has got to, basically, what we as picture framers should do is present the work so that when the viewer actually sees the main story, the image itself. I always say to my clients, if you notice the frame or the mount before you notice your picture, I've failed.
Yeah.
So, you know, quite often people come to me and they sort of say, oh, well, I think what I really want is I just want something nice and simple. I want a white mount and a black frame. And you kind of think, well, you could go down to the range for that.
However, that wouldn't preserve their beautiful picture, would it? Because there are lots of other bits to it than that.
Yeah. But from an aesthetic point of view, you do kind of think, well, you know, use me, I'm here, kind of thing.
Yeah. And use all the experience that you've had.
Yeah.
But so that you can give them so much guidance, because your aesthetic and your practical background.
Can I show you a quick example of that?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I'll show you the magazine and you can talk us through, but actually be much better if you've got something right there that you can show us.
I hope you can see this. I'm just going to turn the... Right. Can you see the two little pictures in the background?
Yes.
Right. The one at the bottom's got a white mount and a dark frame, and then they're both exactly the same image. They're actually a couple of greetings cards. And the way that I framed it at the top, that is my suggestion here. What you actually notice first, in my opinion, is the sunset.
Yeah, I get that.
Whereas the one at the bottom here, the first thing you see is the mount. So that mount and frame has, in my view, has failed totally to actually present the image, to present the main story of the image, which mine does.
That's a really interesting conversation, because when we think about presenting work for a domestic setting as opposed to an exhibition setting, quite a different requirement for those two things. So for me as a curator, I need everything to be in a neutral setting. So I'd want to have the white mount scenario. So if it was an artist having work framed for a exhibition where they're sharing the space with lots of other artists, you'd have to go for the white mount, because that is something that everyone can sit, it's equal. However, if it were a solo show where they were presenting their work all together as a body of work, then the grey one holds up, because that's an aesthetic taste. It's part of the entire story of the work. So it's really interesting, isn't it, how you have to approach the conversation depending on the outcome. And as you say, most of the time you're working with people who have bought the artwork and are then going to have it presented in their own home.
Actually, what you've just said there about a group of artists coming together as in exhibition, this piece of work here, that was exactly the scenario that piece was in. And I've got 4 more pieces by France. France is an artist who I work with. She's a Canadian artist who bases her inspiration is music. And she used to be an engineer, a sound engineer, when she was in Canada. And she came over to England, and she's now pursuing her creative career as an artist. But that
beautiful work.
That painting and the 3 others that I have here, that frame was chosen for that very reason. So that's the thing, isn't it? When you choose the framing, and you will make a different decision as an artist choosing to frame your work as opposed to someone framing the work for their own domestic setting in their own home. And the same goes for the frames, I think, as well. Not only would you be choosing a more subtle, just like a white, grey or black frame for if you were going to be showing your work as an artist within a group setting, a buyer for their own home might want something quite elaborate, quite different,
and quite decorative. It's quite a different conversation, isn't it? What an artist would choose and what a buyer would choose. And you're working with both, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
That might take a bit of a mindset shift each time that you, when you're asking your question, your pre-qualifier questions.
Yeah. It can, but I mean, a group of artists can bring an exhibition together by I suppose all getting together and actually deciding for themselves what works, and putting together pieces of work which actually sit well together, and then you can tie it together all the more by making a joint decision about how it's presented.
Yeah, I think this whole presentation conversation is a really complex one, but working with someone who is professional and understands that is really important. I handed you a piece of work yesterday from an artist who had bought it, didn't I? And it's very dark blue.
Yes,
the background is very dark blue, isn't it? So how have you started the conversation with the owner of that piece of work? How did you approach that with her?
Well, we haven't actually.
Oh, haven't you?
We haven't had the chat yet.
I
emailed Sophie, and I did quickly look at my emails before arriving tonight, and hadn't heard back from her yet. So we will.
It'd be very interesting to see how that one evolves, because it's me. She's there. Now you need to answer the questions now, Sophie. She just emailed you. There you go. She just emailed you. It's the most beautiful blue in the background, but that is quite a dominant color, and that's going to take some work. It's very textile-y, actually. It's got almost a texture to it, hasn't it? Yeah. So working. Let's plan now. So there you are. She wants you to get her piece out. Get it out. Here it is. It's a beautiful piece of work. It would be really lovely to see. So what I was going to do is just show your page in the Pure magazine so that you can talk us through. I'm going to find my screen share down here, and then it's on Chrome. She can't wait to see it. I know we've all seen it and you haven't seen it, Sophie. We saw it yesterday. So I'm just going to bring this up onto the screen so you can talk us through what's on it. So this is your page in the Pure magazine.
Yes. So on the left was actually a photo shoot that we did in the studio when Stella Chapman from Salt Design redesigned my website for me. So that image on the left was a photograph which was taken to create a kind of sort of finished but not quite finished kind of sort of open to suggestion kind of feeling, and also the space on the left meant that I could use the image and put some typeface or something over the top of it. But I just like the image. I like the neutral kind of aspect of it,
and that exactly kind of reinforces what we were just saying about thinking about your framing, because it is neutral. That image will sit anywhere and it will do its job for you, won't it? So, and you say the same conversation when you're framing, but you wouldn't want that kind of image if you were doing it bespoke for your own self. So this conversation around where it's going, and therefore the suitability of something that's quite neutral and pared back compared to something that's quite over the top. I'm hoping that Sophie's going to go for something quite elaborate, because the picture really does deserve it. It really does deserve something quite elaborate. And then on the right hand side, it's a Banksy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, this was an interesting one because it wasn't a very large piece. It was about A4 size, and the bottom had been ripped off. A piece had been ripped off the bottom. It was deliberate. That's how the artist had finished the piece of work. It was done on a bit of old corrugated card,
as Banksy always is.
And it's one of his stencils, Kissing Coppers. The owner brought it over to me, and you can probably see from the second photograph that there is a message and some writing and the Dismaland stamp on the back there. So the owner wanted to be able to see both the front and the back. But at the same time, he didn't want anything stuck to the image. Normally with artwork, you hinge the work into a mount.
Yes.
But he didn't want anything attached to this at all. So what I had to do was to present the work in a mount to be viewed both from the front and from the back. And how do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you do that so the work actually stays in place and, you know, isn't going to be floating around?
And has that got glass on it as well?
It's got museum glass on the front and standard glass on the back, and the work is actually encapsulated within an envelope of material called Melanex, which is a conservation. It's an inert material, which basically means it doesn't give off gases that can destroy the artwork. So, but he didn't. He also didn't want. When I explained that suggestion, he said, yeah, that's fine. But he said, I don't want the possibility of any crushing around the edge because it was on corrugated card with some thickness to it. He didn't want to risk it being crushed at the edge. So basically that was put within a Melanex wallet, but with another mount board inside, so it kind of gave the work a little bit of space.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. It's hard to describe.
No, I understand. So you've created like a spacer so that there is space inside the wallet so that it's not being compressed in any way.
Yeah, but it's still, there's still enough pressure there for the piece of work to be held and not slip. Yeah,
because otherwise you just pick it up and it's just going to slip straight to the bottom of the frame, isn't it?
Yeah. So then, so that's all prepared, and then it's mounted both front and back. So it's mounted twice, and then it's glazed front and back. Then the whole package is sealed.
Goodness gracious. And how long did that take you to do?
Oh, crumbs. Quite a while actually, because when I was sealing the package, I had to undo it all because everything slipped and it wouldn't fit in the frame. So I had to undo it all to then align everything again and then somehow hold it all together so that I could seal it and get it back into the frame and it fits snugly. Because that's the other thing about artwork, it mustn't be fit too tight into the frame because things expand and they contract, and if it expands it can blow the frame, it can push the frame open.
And things do, because obviously moisture and air and heat and everything, and they're materials that are going to pick this kind of thing up. I had a vision of you while you were saying that. I got this vision of you with one arm on the floor and one hand on the ceiling and kind of doing some sort of contortion while trying to hold a frame.
It wasn't quite that bad, but nearly.
Did you have to get Julian involved to come and help?
A spare pair of hands is always useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's fascinating. And you must get all sorts of things brought into you like that. I mean, I've handed you this piece that's come across from China for Sophie that's dark blue, and you know, we were saying yesterday I wouldn't even unwrap it and touch it. I was too terrified, so because of the color saturation. Do you use gloves and things? Yes.
I do for certain things, and I do when I'm handling the technical glass, because it's very easy to mark it. It's very easy to damage the technical glasses. There are certain circumstances when it's actually not a good idea to wear gloves, actually, because you need to actually be able to feel what you're doing. But there are certain mediums which it is best to protect, and things like crystals and things like that. But you said to me, you must get in all kinds of things like the Banksy.
Yeah.
In my drawer at the minute, I've got the original embroidery, which was the design for the back cover of one of Elton John's albums.
Wow. So the original design, though.
Yeah. Not the front cover, but the back cover. Apparently the front cover had already been created and signed off. And he suddenly said, yeah, that's great, but I need something for the back now. And this lady who was working in the music industry, also coincidentally, she took off her denim jacket, cut a square out of it, and she said, well, what if I do this? So she spent the whole of that night and into the early hours of the morning creating this embroidery, which was then photographed and used as the back cover for one of Elton John's back covers.
Oh, wow. So, and you've got the original embroidery.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My goodness.
It's in my drawer.
It's in your drawer. Now, and that brings me on to the next question about insurance, because this is a question that often we talk about in, when dealing with artwork, is the insurance of that artwork. So when people bring their artwork to you, I presume you have insurance.
Yeah.
To cover you for theft and for damage and all these kind of things.
Yeah. And also professional indemnity, which took me an age to find because I kept being told that I didn't need it, but I do. So I take up my insurance with a company called Bespoke, who are arts and antiques specialists.
Bespoke, BESSO? Yeah, Bespoke, art and antique specialists. That's interesting. And they give you insurance on the work while it's with you, but also for if someone says you've done a bad job or you've damaged it or something.
Yeah. I wanted that cover. A lot of framers don't take out professional indemnity, but I wanted that. One, because it shows professionalism, and two, you just never know.
No, you don't. You don't know what's up, especially when you're dealing with something like that Banksy.
Yeah, exactly.
And
also this piece of embroidery, I mean, I've got all of the backups I need, and I've got all of the technical advice that I can go to if there's anything that I'm ever in doubt about, or I don't feel that I have enough knowledge in. This is why being a member of the Fine Art Trade Guild is so fantastic, because it's just this mega library, and they are so supportive. And there's a lot of framers who have been framing far longer than I have, who are there and their experience is there to be tapped into. So it's just amazing.
That's why it's so important to be part of those kind of groups. That's what we were saying about yesterday, the power of the collective brain. Being part of something like Pure, being part of something like the Trade Guild doesn't just come with the obvious benefits of, you've got access to insurance and you've got access to exhibiting. It actually gives you this access to the collective brain.
Yeah,
which you can't put a price on that, can you?
You can't. I mean, it's just fabulous. I mean, the membership is what, £300 a year, I think. You've got access to so much. They meet every month. They've got a quarterly magazine, which is always full of technical advice as well as aesthetic, aesthetic inspiration. They write and develop, they write books about aspects of framing, particularly conservation framing, specifically textile framing. And it's all done in conjunction with experts in the field. So that you are getting the best advice, and that you are giving the best advice to your clients.
Do you think that coming from the background that you have, you've done the textiles, you've done the retail, and now you're in the framing, all in? Do you think it's because you've had all those professional experiences that you are so determined to have all of this professional backup and having all your ducks in a row? Do you think?
It could be. But it's partly me.
your mindset.
Yeah, I've just whatever I've done, I've just always wanted to do the best that I can. And it's just a fundamental, and I could not have somebody collect a piece of work that I had framed and let them leave my premises, and me thinking, could have been better, or I think I did that right, or I hope I did that right. Nothing ever leaves me with I've just always had to do things properly and to the best of my ability. So
and that is very, very evident from all of the work that we ever see coming from you. And that's why we hand over work to you, and that's why we come and ask you for advice, especially, you know, when things don't quite go right. You know, you're there and you'll give the very best advice, and we're incredibly grateful to be able to access your knowledge. It's incredible. We've got a few questions, Bev.
Ooh, heck.
Oh, heck. Oh, dear. It's okay. They're not that bad. When Fran's asking, when do you start to discuss pricing in the design process? When do you bring that into the conversation?
Well, we work through the ideas and the ideal presentation. And because I use software, it's really easy. I put in the ideal scenario first. During the conversation, we're talking also about the quality, the standard of framing that this is to be completed at, which involves, you know, the type and style of glass. But because I use framing software, it means that I can put the ideal scenario in, and if it calculates rather expensively or more than the client had anticipated, I can then start changing things. I mean, the obvious thing to change is the glass, because conservation glass is more expensive than standard glass. And then there are even more expensive glasses than the conservation glass. You can go right up to museum glass. So, and the choice of glasses is huge. It's a bit of a minefield. So I actually reduce my options for my clients to the 4 main ones first, and explain all of the characteristics and qualities of those particular glasses. And in particular, talk about the amount of UV protection that each of them provide. Yes. But if we can't find anything within those 4 that meets the client's needs, then I start looking at the other alternatives that are available. So if for example the ideal scenario was to triple mount and V-groove and put a hidden spacer mount in and all the rest of it, and it's a mega expensive molding and it's top end glass, well, then you can start knocking things back by perhaps, you know, double mounting it, no spacer mount, and a more modest frame, but still presents the work nicely. Yeah.
So you really, that comes in as once someone's designed their ideal outcome, then you can start to have that conversation. Well, this is the cost for your ideal outcome, and then we can either walk it forward or walk it back. Some people will say they're happy to go up to museum glass, and as you say, it's about the UV, isn't it? Now, you mentioned frames and frame moldings, and I'm very intrigued how the framing industry is going to respond to the whole notion of sustainability around frames. I know that they're wood or plastic, but is that a conversation that has started now about sustainability within the framing industry? Because it's a heavy user of plastic, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't use Polkor plastic moldings. I don't like them. You have to use a special glue for them. It can easily go wrong, and they muck up my blades.
So nothing to do with sustainability, but they're just very bad.
They're horrible. They're fine for, like, if you're framing for hotels and they're having lots and lots of pictures done. It's a less expensive option, but they're not nice at all.
And they're not sustainable unless, are they starting to do them with even even if they were doing them with recycled plastic, it's still not sustainable.
I honestly don't know about the plastic mouldings, because I'm personally not interested in them and don't use them. But the sustainability aspect of framing with wooden mouldings, a number of suppliers have been introducing, I think it's called FSC mouldings, for quite some time. Lion particularly have. So the mouldings are made of timbers which have been sustainably sourced.
And are they more expensive in that case? Are you finding?
No, I would say not.
That's good.
Yeah. Just thinking, because Lion's prices are, I wouldn't say they're modest, but they are competitive. They're perhaps not quite so good design-wise as some suppliers, but they, from the sustainability aspect, they're amazing.
And do you introduce this conversation of sustainability while you're having the conversation with the client?
I'll be honest, so far I haven't, but in the light of current events, I think it would be a good idea to start talking about it.
Yeah, I think it's something
I've never been asked either. I've never been asked by any client whether about sustainability. So
you could be at the leading edge of the sustainability conversation. I just think it's really important that we think about these things and we start introducing them into our everyday thought processes. I mean, I've got right in front of me the Sprout pencils. They're from the Sprout man that I was talking to the other day. And it really made me think. I now approach everything. We're very heavy users of framing and card and paper as artists. And I think we have a social responsibility to start making this, introducing this conversation now into everything that we do, so that we can make the most sustainable decision based on what is available to us. And the more we ask it, the more sustainable these things will become, because they'll force the conversation further down the road, won't it?
Yeah. I did recycle some frames once.
Yes.
I was asked to reframe these beautiful little watercolors. I say little, they were kind of this kind of size. And the moulding that had been used was a very pretty, old-fashioned, but very pretty little gold moulding. And the lady didn't want them back. So I said, well, would you mind if I cut them up and made some little tiny frames from them? Because they were perfect for miniatures. The style of the moulding and the size of the moulding was perfect for miniature work. So that's what I did. I cut them up and made little frames from them.
I think every little helps. We want to not be throwing things away. We want to be using them and reusing them as best we can. But I was just intrigued as to whether this, as we're using wood and paper, card in the framing industry, whether that's something that the framing industry have started to think about. So
they have. They've been thinking about it for quite some time now.
So it's something that you could introduce into the conversation. Yeah. And
also it has been spoken about in this magazine as well.
Oh, good.
So so the Fine Art Trade Guild is,
I think it's absolutely critically important that we stop shying away from it, and we just have to have a very open conversation about it. Absolutely. I think we have a responsibility. Next question from Charlie. Do you worry about handling these pieces like the embroidery piece you were just talking about?
You worry about handling any piece of work. You just treat it as if it's your own. You are aware of what is fragile and what isn't. And particularly with textiles, we kind of investigate the textiles together, myself and the client together. There are ways of handling. I always lay it out on a piece of conservation board, whiteboard, so that we can see the work, so that it's not influenced by colours around it. That helps you to see how translucent the work is and whether I need to use a coloured mount underneath it for whatever reason. It's also, by doing that, it also shows up any damage in the work. If it's an old piece of work, it shows up things like running threads, which you would probably see, not notice until you actually finish and frame and finish the work, and suddenly you can't. It's like when you look at a mirror, or you look at a piece of glass and you don't see something, and then as soon as it's all sealed and finished, you think, how on earth did I miss that?
Yeah.
And you get little knots in threads if the embroiderer hasn't been too specific about how they've worked it. And there's all kinds of things that show up by laying the work on a white sheet, and also holding it up so that you can actually see through it. And so again, gloves, need to wear gloves. And sometimes the work, if it's a contemporary piece of work, say a cross stitch or something like that, sometimes you have to be a little bit tactful in suggesting that the client actually takes it away and gives it a bit of a wash.
I was just about to come on to that. So what about care? Because you could be presented with something that maybe, moths, and because textiles are vulnerable to all these things. Do you suggest people spray them before they
No.
That's completely down to them.
If a piece of work has been damaged by a moth or insects, the best thing to do is actually not undo it. If it's an old piece of work which is it's come in an old frame and it's to be reframed, this is another sort of check that you make before you even try to undo it to progress the job. If there's evidence of insects or anything in there, you don't open it, because you don't know if the insects are actually still active.
Yeah.
The other thing that you wouldn't open up for is if you are aware of mold.
Right.
So you just would not open it. You just very tactfully suggest that the owner visits a textile conservator to get everything stabilised. Yeah,
because mold, if you open the mold and that releases the spores into your environment, that's not going to be good for anyone, is it?
No.
And gosh, it's a scary thing. Honestly, anything could happen. It's a scary thing. Yes, please. How on earth do you deal with that? Please, could you take that away? I can imagine them getting very upset.
Well, again, I suppose it comes down to my training in talking to people.
M&S again.
Yeah, good old M&S. It's being genuinely interested in the clients and what they've brought into you, and it's being genuine about how you feel about what you do and why you do it. And for me, for an old piece of work to come in and for me to be able to turn it around and it go back out, and it's gone from being really tired and kind of almost ending up in a skip to going out of here looking really stunning, and it's got a life to live still.
Yeah. So that must be so rewarding.
One of the nicest things about my job is when clients come to collect their work. I love that when they see it for the first time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you so much. I'm just going to do a quick screen share again of the magazine so people can know how they can get in contact with you. So let's just bring the magazine back up here, and then we can show the full page. So you are on page 78 and 79 in the magazine, and people can pick up the magazines we've started distributing them now, so there's a lot of them at the hotel where we have our gallery in Ballantynes in Hastings, but now we're starting to send them out, so they're getting further and further afield. There's some in London now. You just have to keep your eyes peeled. However, if you would like one, you can go straight onto the Pure website in the shop and you can order one and we'll post it to you. But here's Bev's details you'll see on the magazine here. So you've got Bev's email there, and then her website, and she's on Facebook and Instagram, so you can contact her by direct message on any of those. bring you back up, and shall I come back and join you just to say goodbye? I won't leave you hanging there on your own. Thank you so much. That's absolutely fascinating. I had no idea about your textiles background. I had no idea about your M&S background, but you can see how they inform and inspire what you do now. And I think it's really important for people to understand how multidimensional you are. And that's why you bring such an interesting and also intelligent approach to the way you handle framing.
Oh, you'll make me cry in a minute.
But you do. You're both interested in a really enthusiastic way, but you're also intelligent in the way you're approaching the solution for them. And when I suggested about the sustainability, you were like, I haven't, but I'm going to. And that, that's a really, that for me is quite moving, that someone has embraced that idea and is going to like start integrating that into their work. So no, thank you for looking out for the artists and looking out for the people who buy the artwork and making sure that their investment is looked after, and the artist's many hours of doing their work is also cherished.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing, isn't it? We're the intermediaries, and it's cherishing that work because someone's heart and soul.
You never know what you're framing. You could be framing the work of an artist who's just starting out, but you don't know where the artist is going to be in the future and how valuable that first piece of work is going to be. So
absolutely,
you have to treat everything that comes through your door with an awful lot of respect, whether it's a style of work that you like or not. You have to give it the same attention and the same respect. And I try to do that with everything that I work on. Yeah,
which is really evident in what you do. And you're absolutely right. Our aesthetic taste is just personal to us. It's irrelevant, really, in the bigger play of things. Treat everybody with the equal respect. Treat them how you would want to be treated yourself.
Exactly.
And just going back to yesterday when we were looking at that work from the Bloomsbury group and the stuff that's come from Charleston, they didn't know that this was still going to be on show, nearly 100 years later. And we were looking at a blanket box that had been painted. And we were saying, it just looked like it had been painted with house paints, didn't it? With emulsion.
Yeah.
And they didn't know that that was still going to be perceived as valuable and wanted people to see it, all these many years later. And we have to think that way. We have to think legacy.
Yes. Definitely.
You have to think legacy. The artists have to think legacy about their work and invest in having it framed properly. And the buyers, the collectors, the same thing. Because you just don't know. Exactly. You just don't know. So.
And how would I feel if say I framed a piece of work of one of the Pure artists, and at some point in the future, they are sort of being collected worldwide. And that first piece of work that I framed, something has happened to it because I used the standard mount, or I used the wrong tapes to hinge the work, or I didn't seal the mount package, or whatever. It's I couldn't live with myself.
No, and that is when you go to a framer like yourself, you're getting that. You're not just getting someone who frames, you're getting all that history and experience, but you're also getting that intellect and that intelligence and that integrity. So thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for being you. Thank you for sharing that with us as well. Because I know that's, there's a lot of like personal stuff in there that we draw out of you. and get you to share. But I think it's important that people understand what makes you tick, and why they should come to you, and a lot of the framers that we use have similar stories, and it's really inspiring for people to hear these stories. They know a bit the human side of it a bit more. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. So let's just have a quick look and see who's next. So on Friday I've got Imelda. So Imelda she does all the gaming and she's doing digital art, and she's an environmentalist, so that's going to be interesting. So it's all around the technology, so that's going to be interesting.
Wow.
Quite a different one for me. I'll be really intrigued to see, because I haven't, that's taken us down that whole NFT and all the digital technology art that we're now seeing. So yeah, so tune in on Friday, because we're going to be having a chat with Imelda, and I think it's going to be a fascinating one. Thank you so much, Bev. Thank you everyone for joining us. And as you all know, this will be up on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days, and so you'll be able to see it. If you go onto the playlist for ART360 Edition 3, you'll be able to see it. And then once it's all finished, that we'll also extract the audio for podcast. So yeah, everyone will be able to get it however they want. Listen to you talking in their cars while they're traveling wherever. All right, you take care, everyone. Have a good rest of the evening, and we'll see you on Friday. Bye.